Hi everyone. In this video I am going to explain the session management concept in web applications. Hope you are enjoying my video tutorials, and in this video I am going to explain how HTTP session works. According to my view, in JSP or servlets, the HTTP session and its understanding is very important, because in almost every web application um, the HTTP session plays an important role. No web application will be there without using the HTTP session in real time. In JSP servlets, it is the little confusing thing over many things. Actually, this concept is not that tough, but if we learn from right place or from right person, it won't be a, that tough. But if we read some sites, it will be difficult to understand. So in this video I will make you this concept very clear, and I will go into depth and how it works like that. Okay, see, I will tell you an example before I go to the HTTP session. See, all of you are most of you are students, so you can relate this example to you. Generally, when you join the college, when you go to the library, and if you ask for a book, the librarian won't give you, because you are new to the library. So what he does is he will issue a new card, the library card, right? On your first visit itself, if you ask the book, no one will provide you. The librarian will ask for you if you have the library card, right? In the same way, you can relate this example to HTTP session. When you go to your librarian and ask for the book, he doesn't know you. So what he will do, so you will introduce as a new student to the college. So what he will do, he will register your name in the library, and he will issue a new library card and issue it to you. So he asks you to get that library card whenever you want a book. So what you will do on your second visit, when to get the book, you will take the library card and show it to the librarian, so he can understand what are the books you picked earlier. If you don't show the librarian this library card, how will he remember you? He can't remember. So to identify you, the library card is the key thing, right? If you show the library card, he can understand what are the books you have taken earlier, right? In that way, same concept, this is the same concept in HTTP session also. When you issue a request to the server, see, when you access a JSP page or servlet to the server for the first time, the container is not having any knowledge of you. So what it will does, like the librarian, see, on your first visit, what librarian prepared? He prepared a library card and issued to you. In the same way, whenever a first request from you came to the server, the container, okay, creates one object at the server side, okay, and give its ID to you in the sense to client. Okay, the container creates one object on the server side, and that container will send back that ID ID means not that object. For every object you can think like there will be some ID, session ID. That session ID will be sent to the client along with the response in the background. You won't see that. It will work in the background. Okay, the server will set a session ID and sends to the client. How it will send means, see, we will see in a diagram, then you will better understand. Assume this is a browser. Assume this is a server. Okay, you send a request. Server. One. Okay, you sent a first request to the server. Okay, okay, now what container will do is, since this is the first request, it creates one session object, HTTP session object. Assume the session ID is session ID is 100. So on your first request server creates an object, and that session ID, assume, for example, assume it as 100. So what server will do is, it created a session and it will send this 100. Okay, okay, so server received your first request. So since you are new to the server, the container creates the session object for you, and it will pass this session ID 100 to the response in cookie. It sets that 100 into the cookie. Okay, it inserts that value into the cookie, and along with this response, this cookie will be sent in the background. So the browser will receive this cookie. Okay, so the client, or what you say, the browser, will receive this cookie. Now when you make second request to server, the client or browser sends the cookie with value 100 to server along with the request. It happens in the background. So when the server sends the request second time, okay, whatever the cookie it has received, this 100, again this cookie will be sent to the server along with the request. Okay, means request to some JSP or something like that. Then what will happen? The server finds the session object. There will be many session objects. And for every user there will be different sessions, right? So this is your session. So when you make the second request, the browser sends this cookie value 100 to the server. So among this is one session and this is one session, but your session is this one 100. Every session will be identified by a session ID. So server finds the session ID based on the value you sent. That means so server picks this session ID. So server understands that okay, this user is not a new user. This user has already sent a request, and it will associate the request to this session ID. So if you set something in the session ID, so if you send third request or fourth request or fifth request, always this cookie will be sent back to the server. So when you set some value in this session, suppose in second request you have set some value in JSP using session.set attribute. Session.set attribute of some name. Then what will happen when you send the request? When you send the third request, container understands that this is an existing user and it will associate with the session ID. So whatever you set something in the second request, it will be accessible in third request, fourth request, fifth request, because all these requests came from the same user. Okay, if you open another browser, and that will be treated as another session. Okay, so in your I think you understand. When you just to relate this with the library, when you go to the library first time, librarian issues a library card and gives it to you, right? Assume browser is like student went to the library, server is like librarian, he issued a card and returned to you. So on the second time when you go to the library, you will take your library card. If you don't take this cookie or library, then if you don't take this library card, then librarian can't understand which books you have taken. So to understand, so from the next time what you will do, you will take the card issued by the librarian. So in the same way, when you make the second request, you will pass this cookie information which contains the session information along with the request. Along with the request means in the librarian example, when you are going to the library is equal to the sending request to a page, JSP page. So in the library example, what librarian performs, he will, based on the library card number, he will identify the information. Suppose he will write the books taken on some page, right? In the same way, all those details will be maintained here in the form of object. In the library example, it will be in the form of a page where he will record all the details of the books you have taken. In the same way, in the second request, container will get this 100 session ID, and it understands that it is an existing user, so it will associate the user with the existing session. So when you set some value here, in the subsequent request based on the session ID, the container identifies the existing session object, and it will give the values when you ask something. Okay, in the second request, if you set some name in the session ID, then you can get that name in the third request also, because all the requests from the same user will be associated with the 100 session ID, right? If another user makes the request, the same thing happens. The server will identify as a new user and creates the HTTP session object. It will create another session and passes this 200 to another user. Okay, the same way. So what will happen? All these requests, all these first request, second request will share this session ID object. So when you set something in this request, the session object will be accessible to second request also, because since browser sends the same cookie value which it received, the container will identify the session object that belongs to you. That is one. So in servlets, how we have to do the session thing is, see, the server sends the session ID in the form of cookie. There is called headers. Along with the response, we can send headers. There is a header called set cookie. Using set cookie header, server will pass the session ID to the client. In the same way, there is a header called cookie. When the request is made to the server, in the background using cookie, we will send the browser will send the session ID it received in the first request. I mean, in the first response it receives 100, right? The same value it will send to the server using cookie header. Okay, so you understand. So where and how this session will be used in the web applications? When you log into the web applications, assume when you give the username and password in Gmail, what will happen? It will authenticate you, okay, and keeps that object in the session. So when you go to the second page or third page, you won't authenticate because you are already an existing user. So all the values that you set in the session, you can use in the other JSP pages. This is called HTTP session. But there is another thing called URL encoding. What happens? Sometimes in browser you can disable the cookies. Okay, we can disable the cookies from the browser. I will show you option. I think many of you know you can disable the cookies. Then the server cannot send the session ID information in the cookie to the browser, since the browser disabled the cookies. So cookie is something like key value pair. Like you can think as hash map, where you will store key and value, like that. Cookie is something like hash value page. So when browser disable the cookies, how can server sends this session ID? It cannot send, right? So what it will do is, there is something called, I will show another. there is a mechanism called URL encoding. Right? Assume so there is something called URL encoding. In the URL encoding, when you generate the response, assume there is something called show employees or some other hyperlinks. Those hyperlinks need to be generated using response.encode URL. Then what will happen is the session ID will be appended to the hyperlink. So in the previous example, how the server sent the session ID using cookies. Using the cookie, it sent the session ID to the client. But in the URL encoding mechanism, since cookies are disabled by the browser, the server sends the session ID by embedding that session ID in the URL itself. So after the response is generated, when you click on the URL, along with the request parameters, this session ID will be sent to the server. So the server identifies the session ID which was created in the earlier request. So all these requests can be mapped to the session ID using the session ID. In the URL encoding, the hyperlinks, all the hyperlinks should be generated using response.encode URL. Response.encode URL. Then what will happen is ahref is equal to show all employees .jsp. Generally you will generate like this, right? In the response, when you log in, you will show a page called show all employees. This is not, you will create as a response, but what you have to do, you have to say response.encode URL of, you have to give this string. Then what will happen is when the hyperlink is displayed, when the hyperlink is generated, when you use the response.encode URL, the server hundred. See, if you generate normally, there is no session ID information after JSP, right? But when you generate the hyperlink using response.encode URL method, the session ID information, the 100 is the session ID, right? This information will be tagged by the server into the URL. So when you click on the show all employees link, the session ID will be passed to the server, and server identifies the session object that is created for you based on the session ID you are going to pass. This is called URL encoding. We will see an example. Okay, we will take small example, new, where is dynamic web project. We will take the web application. See, the container will create the session and sends that session ID through cookie when you say request.getSession in servlet. Okay, when you say request.getSession, the container creates a session object on server side and passes that ID, session ID, through set cookie header to browser or client. So when second request is made and if you call request.getSession, container gets the, so when second request is made, browser will send the session ID it received in the first response. Send the, and when you call the request.getSession, container gets the session ID along with request, because browser sends it. So request.getSession now identifies the user as existing user and gives the same session object 100 created in the first request instead of creating new one. So you can understand, when you say request.getSession in the servlet or JSP, in the servlet you will say request.getSession, but in JSP you just say session.setAttribute. Session dot, this is same as request.getSession dot set attribute in servlet. In JSP you simply say session.setAttribute, but in servlet you will say request.getSession.setAttribute, something like that. So hope you understand. When you say request.getSession, you will just say request.getSession, but the container performs many things. It will checks if this is the first request. If this is the first request, it will create the session object and passes that session ID to the browser through set cookie header. So when the second request is made, browser will send that session ID it received in the first response, okay, through cookie header. So when this request is received by the container, when you call request.getSession, container gets the session ID from the browser, because browser sends the previously received session ID. So session ID checks the objects created on the server, the container checks the session ID with the value that is passed by the browser. So instead of creating new session from the second request, it will use the session object 100 created at the time of first request. So all these requests share the same session ID. If you open another browser, it will be another session. So the same thing, when you open another browser and send the request, the container assumes it as a first request. So container creates another session object 200 and it will send the information to the browser, and from when the second request is made, browser passes this information. If you open another browser, again the same. On the first request, container will create another session called 300, and that it will be passed with the set cookie header to the browser on the second request, it will send 300. So first browser will send the always send the session ID 100. So all the requests, all the JSP requests, serverless requests you made from the first browser will be using the session ID 100. All the requests that came from the second browser will be treated as the one session. So it will always use the 200. All the requests received from the third browser will be treated as another session. So all the requests, JSPs and servlets use the session object called 300. So we will see an example. I will create a servlet. I will create another few JSPs. New JSP first.jsp, second.jsp. Okay, I am writing a small form. Action is equal to slash. Let us see what is the servlet slash session servlet. From the first date JSP, I am sending a request to the servlet. I am adding a form. I will name your name, name is equal to your name, type is equal to text, here td, input type is equal to submit. Okay, my request will go to the first servlet. I will write the code in the string name is equal to request.get parameter of your name, your name is the name used, right? So I have to use that name to get the request parameter. And then I will say session set is equal to request dot get session import the HTTP session. What I am doing is the value you entered in the text field I am setting in the session dot set attribute of your name. So I obtained the name submitted and stored in the name, and I am setting that string into the session. So when you call the request.getSession for the first time, since the container will create the session object for you, and it will pass that session ID to the browser in the response. So now what I am doing, request dispatcher this is equal to request dot get request dispatcher of second dot JSP. I am printing this session value so that you will understand that better. Println of session import this dot forward of request response. Okay, now the control will come to, so response came. So in the session, in the JSP, hi, I will display the value set in the session. Session dot get attribute of name. We will check this, deploy this, add and remove, session management, add, finish. Start this. So I will go to first run it. I will use method is equal to post run on server, next, finish. Give your name Java learner, submit query. Then what will happen? The request will go to the server. The container, since this is the first request, the container, when you call request.getSession, it will create a session object. It will return that session ID to the browser in the response. It will happen in the background, you don't know. So the request went to the servlet forwarded the request to the second.jsp. So the response is the content in the second.jsp. Okay, even since you have set the value in the session, you can access that using session.getAttributeName. Whatever the value you entered in the text field, that will be should be displayed in the second.jsp. Let us run this. Something went wrong. I will display the value set in the session. Sorry, I set the value. Can you see what is the name I have used? I have set with the name, your name, so you have to use that one. I have made a mistake. Let us restart. restart the server, first.jsp, run on server, finish, give Java learner, click on submit. Can you see the value you set in the server, I mean the session, is accessible from second.jsp. If you forward, let us make another thing. We will copy paste the same thing, form, we will do one thing. I will click on another server. Session value. Just I will remove all this. I will just keep the submit button. I am writing another server, creating another server, just to show that the same session can be accessed from all the JSPs and all the servlets, since all these requests will be treated as one session. To show that I am creating another server. Let's not get attitude of your name. Okay, from the another servlet, and copy paste in the code. Just I will redirect to another page called third.jsp. I can access the same value from third.jsp also. I will third.jsp. Let us restart the server. What I am trying to prove is the value you will set in the session is being accessible from all the JSPs and all the servlets. That is what I want to show you. Okay, run on server, finish. See if I modify correctly. Okay, I'm clicking submit query. Can you see? I think I have done some wrong in the input type is equal to text, percentage is equal to why it is not printed in the text field. TD input type is equal to text. Why is it not printed? That's right. Okay, let us see. Just I will display instead of using text field. Unnecessarily, I don't want to waste time on the restart. Run the first.jsp. French name hurry, click submit. Can you see the value you have set in the session servlet? From the session servlet I have set the whatever the value you entered in the text field, I have set that in the session and forwarded to second.jsp. Now the second.jsp is able to access the value you have set in the servlet, and when I click on that, I am sending the request to the another servlet. Okay, another servlet is forwarding to third.jsp. So from third.jsp I am trying to print that value. There also I should be able to access. I think I have made a mistake, might be in name. Session.setAttribute. Another servlet. Your name. The third, here also you should be able to access. Let me restart and see once again if I have made any mistake. Run on server, finish. Okay, Ramesh, and the control went to second.jsp. When I click on that, here also we should get the, can you see the same session, whatever the session object is created, still that is being used. You can see whether it has created new session or not based on the value here. Same is having the same value, that's why same session is being accessed from all the JSP servers. Let us see what I have done wrong. Request dot. Okay, I found the error. I have to remove this. If I don't remove this, request.get parameter will be set as null in the another server. Let me restart. Run on server, finish. Java. So the request went to the servlet. So it created a session, and that session ID is passed to the browser. So when you make, so the response is second.jsp, right? So when you send a second request from here, the browser will send the session ID which it received. So when you click on submit query, this browser will pass that session ID. So the same session, can you see the session object? The same thing will be used even in the next request also. Can you see the same session object is used? I just printed this for your understanding. Can you see I printed? That means in all the requests are sharing the same session. So when you set something in the session, the same value can be accessed from JSP pages, another servlet. From the another servlet, I sent the request to the third JSP. There also it prints. Right now we are in third.jsp. So it is also able to access the session value you kept in the first request in session servlet. Okay, let us see. Now I will open another browser. That is the thing you have to understand. Observe carefully. The session ID ends with 3b0. When I open another browser, give first dot. Remember, the previous session ID ends with 3b0. Now it will be changed since I am sending a request from another browser. Okay, when I submit, second user, when I click on submit, can you see, since we opened another browser, it will be create another session because this browser is treated as a different user. So the container will create a new session and sends that session and new session ID to the browser. I don't know, something, there is a browser problem. When I click on submit, so can you see, let us open, instead of this I will open another Mozilla. When I open another browser, the server treats as can you see, so far 2 sessions are created. When I open another, when I click Mahesh and click on submit, can you see, this is another one. So whenever you open a new browser and sends the request to the container, okay, the container, when you call request.getSession, since it is the first request from the browser, the container creates a new session. So it will always display Mahesh. Okay, this session object contains Mahesh because this is another session. Can you see, check here, it will always click Java because this browser always uses one session ID. This browser always uses one session ID. So when you set Mahesh in this session, all the JSPs and servlets use the session value Mahesh because all the requests share one session object. But in this browser, all these requests share one session object. That is the one which you created in the beginning. Okay, Hope you understand. Thank you.